The pads coming on Monday at 49ers training camp. The most important throw so far from Trey Lance at camp, the MVP for 49ers camp. And you could probably guess it's on the defensive side of the ball. And the 49ers unfortunately lost Mo Hurst, it looks like, for the year with the torn biceps. We'll get into all of it on this episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. If you don't know us, hello. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On 49ers. We're here with you daily, every single day through training camp, through the regular season, and back again into next offseason. It's what we do here. I'm Brian Peacock, NFL analyst, also the co-host of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show here on the network. Croc, former AFL, NFL defensive back, and of course, Arena Bowl champion, and also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, both pulling double duty here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen. And let's start with the bad news to get that out of the way. I mean, poor Mo Hurst can't catch a break in his NFL career. He's had so many injuries. He had some issues coming out of college as well with health, and teams were worried about him. And it seems to be something different every single time. And now it's a torn biceps that could keep Mo Hurst out for the entire year for the 49ers. At the earliest, 4 months. He could be back maybe in December, maybe to give you a little depth for a playoff run. But, man, it's starting to pile up for Mo Hurst, and you start to worry about the guy's career. So it's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, and I think that's the one thing, man. I always feel bad for guys like that, especially someone like him who has a talent, right? Like you saw him last year in limited time where there's things that he does well, but again, last year couldn't stay healthy, had the injury issue, and then now this year starting off the way it is for him. It's really unfortunate, and I feel bad for guys like that who just kind of can't get right with the injury bug.
And he had a message for 49ers fans. He said, "I appreciate all the love and support from everyone. I really can't begin to explain how much this hurts. I hope through my resiliency and this journey that I'm able to inspire those who follow me to keep pushing, work hard, and never give up." So it sounds like he's going to try to fight through this and come back. And I hope he does. And he's a good player. I mean, he was, first round talent, at least a second round talent coming out of college, fell into the fourth round, the top of the fourth round of the Raiders because of those injuries, could never really get his career on track with the Raiders. I was really excited when he was brought to the 49ers because I think he could be just a terror of I could be a starting caliber guy, but even just as a rotational, disruptor, interior penetrator, 3 technique type of guy. He's got that type of talent. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten a chance to see it in the NFL.
And not sure we will. And the tough thing with this is how many more opportunities is he going to get? And I hate for guys, careers to be ruined for that. Like, okay, if you don't have enough talent, that's one thing. But you have the talent and just can't stay on the field. I feel bad for those guys. I feel bad for them. And we've seen that, right? Plenty of guys' careers kind of derailed due to injuries. And some of the times it's things that you can't really, help. I don't know about this torn pec because he tore a bicep, right?
Biceps, yeah.
So how much can you do to prevent tearing your bicep? Is it something that just happens? Because I know sometimes you see a guy reach out a certain way, tries to grab something. Happened to Justin Smith. How did Justin Smith play with a torn bicep for the 49ers?
He's a different dude. He's a bionic man. Yeah, you can't really ask anybody to do anything that Justin Smith did.
Yeah.
And, you don't know how bad it is or what the grade is. And who knows, maybe Mo Hurst will get some good news, but it sounds like bad news for him. And potentially, at some point, it's hard to come back from it. Speaking of second chances, third chances, fourth chances, what about Reuben Foster getting to work out with the Seattle Seahawks? He hasn't played in a game since 2018. How crazy is
really?
that?
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Well, I know he tore his ACL.
He's only played NFL games with the 49ers.
Wow. I know he tore his ACL with Washington.
Yeah,
he
and
was
so
there for a couple years, but couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah, what I found out recently is when he did. So that was 2019. That was after he was reinstated because he was on the commissioner's list after the 49ers released him, and he was reinstated after charges were dropped for 2019 season with Washington. Then I think it might have been like his first day at practice with Washington in spring practices in 2019. He tore not just his ACL, but it was like the LCL, the MCL, all the cruciate ligaments, basically. So it was a really bad one. And he missed that entire year. And then the next year, 2020, he was still hurt from it. It couldn't bounce back and like wasn't the same guy. And so he was on the PUP list. And I think he never really, and then that was it with him. He got some workouts last year, didn't sign with anybody. So he's been on the street for a year, and he's been hurt for 2 years before that. And clearly those injuries mounted up for him, and he wasn't moving the same. So maybe some time helped him, but now getting a workout with the Seattle Seahawks. So who knows? Maybe the 49ers will see a little more of Reuben Foster this year.
That's tough. And I always think about these guys like livelihood, right? Being able to support your family and doing it, supporting your family by doing the thing that you love most, which is playing football. And that financial aspect of things starts to kick in. Like, you haven't played in a few years. You haven't been on the roster. I think, fans think like, oh man, these guys, they just have all this money. It's like, nah, like they don't. And when you haven't played in a long time, like, he's just living like a normal person trying to figure out a way to kind of get by. And I think that's the toughest part. When I hear that, right, a guy who hasn't played since 2018, even though he was on the roster at one time, but even then you only get like a split of your contract. I remember looking at my contract, and there was this injury thing in there to where if, let's say I tore my ACL in training camp, well, instead of getting the $405,000 that I was supposed to get that year, I would have only gotten like $288,000. And then, you pay taxes on that and all that. You got to support people. It ends up not being a whole lot of money. So, that's tough. That's tough. I hope he makes it with Seattle. He was a good football player.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And so good luck there. Good luck to Mo Hurst, and hopefully he's able to come back and salvage his NFL career with all his injuries as well. Another player coming back from injury for the 49ers on the interior of the defensive line is Javon Kinlaw. He's looking big. He's looking lean and mean at training camp, but I'm getting a little worried about the depth on the D-line, Croc. Not really the edge. The edge, there's all kinds of competition and talent out there. Now it's the interior, and you've already got Eric Armstead on the inside, and he's got an MCL sprain, I believe it is, to start camp. Kinlaw's coming off of an injury. There's some other players there, but there's only one guy I think on the roster that's over 300 pounds. So you start to get worried if teams can run up the middle on you. That's game over a lot of times. You got to be able to stop that before that, that pass defense and that pass rush can go get opposing teams and really create a difference. And so you got to stop the run first still. No DJ Jones anymore. Am I getting a little too worried here about the interior defensive line, Croc?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't really factor in Mo Hurst as the reason why the 49ers were just going to be so great against the run, right? And again, I don't know if they are going to, but he wasn't going to be the deciding factor in them being as great. Obviously, having the depth, that definitely would help, and losing a guy like him, that part hurts. But, I mean, there's still questions. Was he even going to make the team? And you look at them bringing in DG. You look at Armstead playing more full-time. Obviously, you hope that Kinlaw can be on the field full-time now. Obviously more of a two-down type guy initially coming up in this next year. But you're getting guys back. I love Kevin Givens. I mean, he's a guy who I feel like is, really good, maybe one of the more underrated players on the 49ers roster. So I'm not too worried about it. If they feel like they need a little bit more depth in the interior, I mean, are we talking about like a guy as a pass rusher from the inside? I think they're going to be fine. And they have other guys that can help with the pass rush from the inside. I think they'll be fine without Mo Hurst. It hurts Mo Hurst more than it hurts the 49ers, him being out.
Yeah. It's just a combined, with so many injuries and some questions on the interior, because that could become razor thin really quick, even though Mo Hurst wasn't a big part of it. If he was available to be a backup and a rotational piece, it would have been nice. They brought in Hassan Ridgeway this offseason, more of a 3-tech than a nose tackle type, run stuffer type. Robert Kimdiche, they brought in to start camp here. Now it's, it's wide open for him to make the roster, because even including Robert Kimdiche, you've got Kinlaw and Armstead and Ridgeway. Then you got Kevin Givens, which makes 4. Now Kimdiche's got a really good shot of being the 5th one. And with no Mo Hurst, Kalia Davis, the rookie's going to go on, or he's already on the NFI list. I'm sure he's not going to be activated in the first half of the season, if at all, for the 49ers this year. An undrafted free agent in Kevin Atkins, so that's it. And so that's where you start to get a little bit worried. If Kinlaw or Armstead go out, you start to get very thin on the interior. And who's going to be
Armstead is out right now.
And Armstead's already out. So Kevin Givens, or I'm not even sure. Actually, we'll find out when pads go on Monday if it's Ridgeway or Kevin Givens who are, you know what? That's funny. I haven't heard. All I've heard is that the defensive line is beating up the offensive line, but I don't think I got any reports. Have you seen who's in there for Armstead getting those first reps? Is it Givens or Ridgeway?
I haven't. When we go to breakout, I'll look and see if my guy Brad Graham, he usually posts, who's in on the offensive line. I'll see if he posts anything about the defensive line.
I would guess that because Givens is not the biggest guy, but he's built more low to the ground. He's only like 6'1", 290, I think. But I would guess that he's more of the nose tackle vibe than Hassan Ridgeway. So Ridgeway, my guess would be he would be backing up Armstead, and Givens would be backing up the nose. Kim DJ has been more of a interior penetrator than a nose, but I think he might be bigger than he was. I think he was only 285 or something coming out of Ole Miss. I mean, he was a monster of a prospect back in the day. I think Kim DJ, I think, was the number one prospect in all of the number one recruit to college football the year he came out of high school.
Oh, wow.
Number one out of everybody. And he was a monster of a dude at one point too. So maybe they have enough depth. I don't know. I'm a little bit worried. I'm a little bit worried about the run defense because Javon Kinlaw, I don't think even if he's healthy and in good shape, I don't think you can pencil him in for 17 games, right? So I wouldn't be shocked if they bring in a big-bodied nose tackle. Let's put it that way at some point in training camp. All right, check that out, Croc. What was the depth chart behind Kinlaw and Armstead on the interior to start camp? We'll talk a little bit about who the MVP was in the two-hand touch portion of camp to start before pads come on Monday, and the most important throw Trey Lance has made so far in training camp next. After we talk about Dave, hindsight is 2020, and you can't change the past. But what if you could get a little help from your future self? Maybe you'd ask to borrow a little cash. Now you can with Dave. Dave is a banking app that helps you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to catch up on anything you need to. Those bills. Maybe you need some more cash to fill up your tank. We know that's not cheap these days. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch, need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's Dave, D-A-V-E. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out everything else on the Locked On NFL network, including the Peacock and Williamson NFL show and Locked On NFL Draft. Who's the MVP, Croc, of the early going of training camp to you? From what I've seen, from all reports gathered, the defense has been beaten up on the offense, especially after that first practice. Remember, we got excited on the first practice because there was like 2 incompletions on the offensive side of the ball, and Nate Sudfeld was perfect. After that, they've been like sub 50% passing, and maybe it doesn't look as bad in person as the numbers made it look. There's been some drops and obviously good plays on defense. So you get excited about how good the defense is playing. You get a little bit worried about how bad the offense is playing. If the defense is playing that well with them every day, I think the offensive line will benefit from pads coming on, being a little bit more physical with those defensive linemen. But Croc, is there one name that stands out to you that you would call the MVP of the two-hand touch portion of training camp before pads come on?
Yeah, it sounds like the cornerbacks, and specifically you hear the name Charvarius Ward popping up, and he's given up a few plays. There's one play in particular we'll talk about, throw from Trey Lance down the field to Brandon Ayuk. But aside from that, you talk about making plays. He has multiple interceptions. I don't know how many picks he has right now, 3 picks or 4 picks? I don't know. He's picking the ball off like crazy out there in the middle of the field. It sounds like it's Nate Sudfeld kind of throwing the ball to him. Maybe Nate Sudfeld should stay away from Charvarius Ward right now. But having a defensive back out there, a cornerback out there, challenging receivers the way he is, getting up in their face. He talked about being a press specialist, and right now it's paying off, and he's making life difficult, not just for the receivers, but for the quarterbacks as well, who are trying to throw the ball to their targets and kind of can't. He's squeezing those windows a little bit. I like it. And the 49er fans are getting really excited about him. And I've seen a lot of people, man, he's the best cornerback since Deion Sanders. And it's like, I got to see him play in the game first and with some pads on. But it is exciting to have a guy out there making plays.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel's not on the field yet either, so he'll have his hands full there, not only trying to cover, but trying to tackle Deebo because the pads will be on at that point if Deebo even gets on the field. What'd you make of that comment, though, from Ward talking about his style versus Mosley's style? And one guy's better press, one guy's better off. Do you think that changes the way that D'Amico Ryans could deploy the 49ers defense this year?
Nah, man, when you look at teams like the Baltimore Ravens, I would say that, having Marcus Peters out there on one side and then guys like Marlon Humphrey or, Jimmy Smith, those guys all have like kind of these drastically different play styles. So, a good coordinator is going to put one guy in position or have him be able to play to, what benefits him. There's definitely more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to coverages. And one thing I've learned being with the New York Jets with Rex Ryan was, they gave us the freedom to be able to press from any coverage except for, it was like sky cover 3. So outside of sky cover 3, if it was a cover 3 fire zone, cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no matter the coverage, I could play press. The only thing that changes is maybe your alignment and shading inside or outside based on the coverage that you're playing. But if you're a guy like Charvarius Ward or you're the defense coordinator, D'Amico Ryans, and he wants to run, I want to run this cover 4 blitz or whatever. Well, cover 4, Ward can still line up in press and Mosley can still line up in off. So I don't think it changes anything with how he calls plays. It shouldn't, at least.
Do you think because the defense in the secondary is in a good place right now, but do you think spending the money on Ward in the free agency period hurts the 49ers' ability to bring back Mosley, who's basically on that same path of being, undrafted free agent guy, made good, really good player? Mosley could have the best year of his career going into free agency, and all of a sudden the 49ers are like, oh, shoot, we can't pay this guy now because we just paid the other guy, and he'll be asking for as much money or more probably as Ward just got because he's on a similar, path in his playing career. It might be a one and done with Ward and Mosley together at cornerback. So some of those young guys got to show up.
Yeah, you definitely would like to see the young guys show up so you can kind of push the more expensive guy out of there if you end up having to play Emmanuel Mosley. But you want good corners. And can they pay both guys? I could see it. I think Charvarius Ward, the way his contract is kind of structured, I don't know. It sounded like a lot of money when you first heard about the signing. But then when people started diving into how it's structured, I believe they can let him go after that second year and not really lose money. I think it escalates. His amount goes up big time in that third year. But I want to say the first 2 years, it's something along the lines of paid $20 million over the first 2 years, which isn't anything crazy. But if he plays that last year, it goes up significantly. Maybe they factor that in when looking to sign Emmanuel Mosley.
All right. Courtesy of overthecap.com, looking at Charvarius Ward contract structure here. So 2022, he's got the signing bonus, which was $13.5 million signing bonus, it looks like. And so, yeah, obviously they can't do any cuts or anything now. But if you're looking at next year, they actually can start saving money basically starting in 2023. And definitely after the first 2 years, they could save about $8 million if they were to cut Charvarius Ward before the final year of his contract. It's only a 3-year deal. It's a 5-year deal because there's 2 years of void years at the very end of the contract. So they made it friendly for the first year. It jumps up next year, and they can definitely get out of it if they want to after 2024. But he might be actually a bargain in 2024 too. So I'm not sure if they would even want to go that route. But it's structured in a way that is somewhat team friendly. So yeah, maybe they could bring in Mosley as well. But Mosley's the free agent that nobody's really talking about next year. Niners got a lot of work to do next year. McGlinchey's going into last year. Mosley. And those are high dollar positions on top of Deebo and Nick Bosa.
Tackle, cornerback. So, yeah, then you're going to Deebo, Nick Bosa, those guys, their contracts are going to start to kick in. Do you make Nick Bosa play out the 5th-year option, Or do you say, you know what, like, now we're going to just rip up that 5th year, restructure everything, or add some additional years of money, new money, whatever they say?
I bet the Bosa structure takes his cap number down and actually makes that 5th-year option year lower and push some of the money into the future. As far as the cap is concerned, he'll get actual money. But with signing bonus and his 5th-year option, I bet they make it cap friendly, at least in the first couple of years. But the cap's going to be going up too, so they can do a lot of things. And you're worried there's the interior offensive line. But, man, those young corners, it's pretty important going forward. So that's definitely who we'll have our eyes on, I think, a lot, especially Croc. I might actually focus a little bit more on the trenches, and Croc will focus a little bit more on his specialty, the DBs, when we are at 49ers camp this weekend. So we will be seeing some folks out there. Let us know if you are going to be at camp at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker. Say hi to y'all. And next, Croc, the most important throw in training camp by Trey Lance. But first, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Croc and I have already talked about that over under 12 sacks for Nick Bosa. Take the over on that one all day long. 49ers to win the Super Bowl, you can bet on it. You can bet on the exact opponent for the 49ers in the Super Bowl if you want. You can bet on Kyle Shanahan as coach of the year. You can bet on rookies of the years. You can bet on just about anything already all season long at BetOnline as far as the NFL is concerned. But you can also find reviews and news of every league: Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, live in-game betting, golf, Vegas casino games. You name it, they've got you covered at BetOnline, the top online source for your sports wagering and information this season. So get over to BetOnline today. Use your desktop or mobile device to learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Croc, what was the most important throw you've seen from Trey Lance so far in 2022 training camp?
Oh, man, it definitely has to be the deep throw down the right sideline to Brandon Ayuk. I hear it was about 45 yards down the field. Potentially would have been a sack, Nick Bosa. But listen, we just got anything Nick Bosa does, we just have to act like it doesn't happen, because realistically, guys aren't going to get after you as quickly as Nick Bosa would.
So Nick Bosa is already a freak and already comes into camp in insane shape, but he hasn't had to deal with any off-season injuries or anything this year. Dude, literally, I'm worried that he doesn't have enough body fat to stay alive. Because if you get below like 4% body fat, it's like bad for you, and you could start to have health problems. He's on that cusp. He looks ridiculous. He's in insane shape. The way he explodes off the ball. I mean, Nick Bosa might have one of those like 20 sack years. He might go absolutely nuts this year.
I was on with Bleacher Report. That was one of my bold predictions. Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year.
There you go. And you can bet on it, by the way, at BetOnline too. So
yeah, but
let's go.
As far as the throw, and again, it's one throw. Actually, there were a couple that he threw downfield to guys. Completed one downfield to Kittle, another one downfield to Ayuk. But we were able to see the Ayuk throw. And for me, the reason why it was like important, right? Because again, it's one play, but just the aggressiveness of him and his willingness to really try and fit the ball into a tight spot. Now, why does he have to fit a ball into a tight spot? Because dang corners have been playing so well. And when you look at that throw, you see a guy underneath, his arm stretched out. The ball goes right over his outstretched arm. You see a guy over the top. He's right there waiting. If it is off at all, he's potentially there to pick it off. But just his ability and just the aggressiveness to throw that ball in there, the confidence that he has within himself and his ability, that stood out to me on that throw. So again, just one throw, but I just thought it spoke volumes in the sense of what to look forward to seeing from him. And if you can do it in practice, and that's the part that I'm trying to get people to understand when they're talking about the practice numbers, and you're looking at the completions versus incompletions. What are they attempting? Is he attempting passes like this and they're falling incomplete? If that's the case, I like it. Or do you want him to just throw these little checkdowns and complete a high percentage of passes like maybe he did day one, but we're talking about 5 to 10 yard passes. And yeah, that could be more consistent, but I like the aggressiveness, push the ball down the field. It sounded like he had kind of this run late in practice of several really good throws, a couple where they had to be layered. Also threw a pick where he wasn't able to get that ball up and down. But a lot of good stuff. I'm pretty happy about how training camp has gone and him continuing to fire those balls in there.
It sounds like gets hotter as practice goes along, which is probably a good sign, that he gets better and improves every day at practice. That throw was on Charvarius Ward too, right?
Right.
The MVP.
And you saw where the placement,
tight coverage and Ayuk going and getting the ball. So there's multiple ways that you can break down this one play and why it was so important. The coverage was on point. The accuracy, the ability to throw to a player who's covered, because it's not always going to be clean. You're not always going to get a wide open guy to throw to. So the ability to make that throw, the balls to try that and attempt it, and to put it in the only place where your offensive player can go get it, and then Ayuk on the other end making the play too. So lots to take away from that one.
Yeah, lots of things to be excited about with the young guy and just his development. Also, I heard about a throw, and maybe I wonder if Fred Warner, the interception he got on Trey Lance, if it was to his left, because Grant Conrad talked about potentially some struggles with Lance throwing to his left. And I talked to my QB guru, all right, Greg Pinelli, about that, and he mentioned a few different things about like overstepping, overstriding, all this, that, and the other. Like your eyes, like you have to get your eyes there and kind of flip them around. They got to get there quick, and then that should take like the rest of your body and mechanics to kind of get in that direction. There was a lot. I'd have to read off exactly what he said, but he showed me some videos, and he was like, "This is for your eyes only," and I'm not going to show anybody, but I definitely can kind of talk about what he sent me. And it was a certain quarterback, may or may not be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And he showed me this quarterback 3 days after his draft, after he was drafted by the team he was drafted by. All right. And it was a throw to his left. I mean, he just sails it. This is with no pass rush, no defense out there, no cornerback. It's just routes on air with the receiver. And he just throws it so far behind the receiver, not even close. But he just talked about the mechanics of it and why that happens. And I think that gives me less cause for concern when it comes to Trey Lance and missing certain things, because as long as he's working on those things, the mechanics of it, and continuing to kind of progress in that way down the line, and it's not going to be something that just happens right now, or depending on the quarterback coach, hopefully sooner than later. But it sounds like he probably needs to work with Greg Pinelli. All right, but the mechanics and the footwork that goes into completing a pass like that, how consistent can you get? So I think that's something where you see quarterbacks have an issue with that. He talked about, I'm talking about Greg. Greg talked about that not being an issue for Jimmy Garoppolo, because it's something Jimmy does. Like there's something that Jimmy does with like his feet and his ability to kind of flip, but kind of throw an accurate ball without his feet or something like that to the left. He said the only issue with the way that Jimmy does it is when you don't get your legs under you or your feet under you in the way that he doesn't, you lose some velocity on the ball. So he doesn't lose the accuracy, which he ends up doing really good, and maybe has to throw it with a little bit better timing, but he loses some velocity on it. And I think that's why sometimes we see some of those passes to the outside by Jimmy Garoppolo kind of float a little bit to the receiver and potentially can get picked off.
Does the unnamed NFL quarterback have two first names?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I never thought about it like that, but yeah.
You mentioned Fred Warner too, and to talk about the other end of that throw from Trey Lance, and it was Brandon Ayuk going up to make that catch. Fred Warner has been all over Brandon Ayuk in practices, and Fred Warner was asked about it, and he says that, quote, "I chose him out, and I'll say why. I think he's ready to make that next step and to play at an elite level." So do you think it's more Fred Warner realizing that that's one of the top guys and he wants to push him a little bit? Or do you think it's maybe Ayuk needs pushing and Fred Warner's the leader that realizes, man, this guy needs to get a fire lit under him so he can go be that guy and doesn't end up in Kyle's doghouse again?
Right. It might be that. And, we've heard him and how he talks to Trey Lance out there, and kind of the banter, the back and forth banter, and how he can get, and he's loud and everybody hears him, and he's going to talk trash, and I like it. And if that's what it takes to get the most out of Brandon Ayuk, so be it. But yeah, he's probably just pushing him to get to that next level, because I know one thing, if I don't think that this guy is, can be better, and again, I want him to get better or whatever, then I'm probably just not going to waste my time talking to him, right? Fred Warner wouldn't waste his time talking to Eric Crocker out there. But with Brandon Ayuk, is like, dude, you got so much talent. You got so much potential. Like, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's time for you to take the next step. And I'm going to talk to you in a way in practice to where hopefully, it's able to get the most out of you. So that is something that I'm definitely going to be paying attention to when we're out there on the practice field.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to get to Levi's and to get to the facility there, watch some of these practices with the pads on next weekend. There's Dwight Clark Day as well, which is always fun for 49ers training camp. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Make sure you're checking out everything else the Locked On Network has to offer for your second listen, including Locked On NFL Draft with one Eric Crocker and the Peacock and Williamson NFL show with myself and former NFL scout Matt Williamson, coming at you daily, covering the entire league. Your team is also covered, no matter the sport, here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And Croc and I back tomorrow, breaking down padded practices, thudding people up out there at Levi's Stadium. Talk to you then right here, Locked On 49ers.